Welcome to Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you very much for choosing to join to this week's episode. Now, this week's episode is an absolute cracker, a technique that I've not actually seen done a lot on bob length hair. Is perfectly usable on a bob length. I don't know why there's not more stuff out there. I hope you take something away from it with you today that you can use wherever you do hair. But just before you go, I just wanted to let everybody know or remind those people that I've got a second YouTube channel called The Life of Hair Extra. It's a reaction channel, but it's not a reaction channel in the style of Brad Mondo or the Hair Buddha. It's a much more deep look at how you can prevent these things happening when people have hair fails or disasters or whatever. Or sometimes we look at really fantastic techniques that I feel need highlighting and showing to a wider audience from channels that may not be quite as big as mine yet. So if you've not checked it out, it's linked down in the description. Go and give it a subscribe. New videos coming every single week to that channel, just like here on Life of Hair. And if you enjoyed today's video or any video, do me the massive favour of hitting that thumbs up button, hitting those comments down below, because they really do help to share the channel to a wider audience. So this is the starting point of our technique today, and we don't see, or I certainly haven't seen, a huge amount of bobs being worked on in this way, especially on clients that are a little bit more mature, shall we say. Now, my lady's got a lot of things going on really. She's got natural regrowth. She's naturally about a level 5. She's got some white hairs, but not loads. She's got a very warm brown colour that you can see there, just as we elevate the section up here as I'm weaving this section. And then she's got some previous highlights or balayage technique that's in her hair. So one of the kind of main objectives today is to soften everything down and create a slightly blonder effect and get rid of a lot of the warmth that is in that kind of mid-band just after her regrowth, that 1 inch long level 5. Technique wise, really simple, super effective technique, an adaptation of something that you've probably seen from me before if you've been here on the channel, but obviously always like to sort of give you better insights and understanding into the techniques that I produce. Now, with this particular technique, very straightforward, horizontal sections to get maximum coverage, fine weaves on the sections so that we get that beautiful diffusion. The depth of these sections though is microscopically fine. That's very important in this particular technique to create this kind of highly blended effect that you'll see at the end. And when we're doing these kind of foilayage, lived-in blonde techniques, the width, the depth of your sections needs to be ultra fine. What you do with the weave is then less relevant. You know, you can do more chunky weaves because you're not digging into the hair too far. You won't get a chunky effect. It's when we've got deeper sections where we're digging into the section as we weave and we're creating very either deep V's or V-shaped weaves into our sections that are hard to saturate. That is what we tend to have achieved from the way that we would maybe highlight from school or our training, wherever we did our training, cosmetology or wherever. You see that a lot when people haven't kind of moved their highlighting techniques forward in their, I guess, progression of their careers. And I used to teach highlighting, and I taught a lot of people who did very proficient highlighting when it was a lot of what I like to call colour changes with foil. And there was lots and lots of blonde going to the hair, and they were packing in tons and tons of foils and turning someone's head from, you know, dark brown to blonde, utilising these, what I'd like to call chunkier, deeper stitches. And then now we're leaving larger gaps in between each of our sections. So for example, I've gone about 1 centimetre to 1.5 centimetres, dependent on where I am on the head here, in between each of these foils. And that does make an enormous difference as to how deep and chunky our weaves are perceived in the end result. And when I was teaching highlighting classes and I asked someone to do a fine weave, their fine weave is nowhere near fine enough, and you have a comparison side by side, they then kind of fully understand that they need to be a little bit more delicate. Now you saw we worked at the back horizontally, and then I went diagonally across the crown area. I like to do that because it helps to create softness in an area on the hair where it's likely to split or part when the client's wearing their hair naturally. Now we're onto the front hairline. We're going to take a section that just mirrors the hairline, and we're going to take a super fine weave, saturate the product really, really well onto the hair. And we're using blue powder bleach and 20 volume in this particular instance. We're using 20 volume because this hair does lift slowly. There is a lot of warmth in the hair, and we will be applying another colour in between the foils in just a second. But we're just going to take subsequent sections that mirror that first section. You can see the gaps in between the sections are around 1 centimetre, maybe slightly wider, and we're going to weave those sections in exactly the same fashion that we did our previous sections. And we're going to then take this section all the way up to the top corner. But you'll see in just a second that we will leave a small triangle that we will pick up again when we do the top sections. And you'll see exactly what I mean by that in just a second. So if you make sure you keep an eye on what I do as I work through these sections. But saturation's king for good lift. What we want is a lovely, beautiful, clean lift whenever we're doing any highlighting techniques or any bleaching techniques. And for me, the answer to the beautiful, clean lift each and every time is great saturation. I go on about it so much in so many of my videos, but it really, really does matter. We're going to do a section that is bang on the hairline here, and then we're going to leave that section. We're going to pick up the piece that we weaved out, and that is going to be our first foil, because I want it to be, it's almost like a money piece, but not a money piece around the face here. It's a very, very kind of soft but bolder highlight around the front hairline. I really, really like doing this technique, and like I say, it doesn't give that full-blown money piece effect. It just gives a slightly more solid effect around the face, but without doing a slice. It looks different to a slice. You're going to have to try it if you haven't tried it before. I really, really love the effect of doing this. You do have to make sure that you're using a microscopic slither of hair when you do this technique, because if you do it and it's too chunky, it will look like more like a money piece or a slice around the hairline. I love the effect. I hope you enjoy it when you see it at the end of this technique. But we want to be right bang on the hairline here. Remember that hairline and through their parting is where all the detail needs to be, and we obviously don't want bad foils everywhere else, but this is the piece, this is the money piece. This is the bit that everybody's going to see. Whereas if you get this bang on point, this is what their clients are going to see, and this is how you're going to pick up new clients, and people are going to recommend. Picking up new clients via word of mouth, I still think is the most valuable way of collecting new clients, even in 2022 and beyond. And I've definitely seen that from some very successful six-figure stylists over the years that I've interviewed or met. And I think for me, we can get all wrapped up in social media, but I still probably pick up the majority of my clients today from word of mouth. In fact, I know that to be a fact. Now you can just see the root slip there slightly, so I'm just grabbing those sections. I'm just sliding the foil back closer to the root area. That will ensure that we are nice and tight onto the scalp, and we can secure using the back. And this is going to really make sure that we don't get any bleeds or any product leaking out of the packets, which is something that is obviously an absolute nightmare if that happens to you. The sections in these first four foils are closer together, maybe 0.5 centimetre or slightly less than 0.5 centimetre. The first two are obviously one section split into two, so they're just gradually getting further apart as we travel back towards the crown area. But ultimately, they're not getting really far apart like you may have seen in some of my other videos. We still want plenty of colour in here, but we want plenty of very, very delicate, beautiful lived-in colour rather than something that feels too heavy. My client still wants to feel blonde, so it's striking that happy medium between the amount of foils we put in terms of the spaces in between the foils and how thick the weaves are. I'm still doing microfine weaves, but I'm making sure that my foils are nice and close together and they're just gently getting further apart as we travel back towards that crown area. So once we've done these final few foils, we'll then move on to painting in between, and I'll show you how I go about that in just a second. So this is our final section here, and you can see we've just worked diagonally through this top section. We're going to repeat this process identically on the opposite side. So the tinting phase of this particular technique is incredibly straightforward. You can see here, we're just applying to the root area and we're feathering down, and I'm going to work my way through the technique in pretty much exactly the same style. We're just stretching the product down to about 1 inch, half a centimetre short of where the blonde starts in the hair. And then I'm using my fingers and my comb to feather and blend and melt the colour down from the root area over that warm band that we've been trying to get rid of in this person's hair. And then we're trying not to overlap too much onto the previous highlights, because I am using a slightly cooler natural, like an NA style natural, but it's not got a lot of ash in it. I've made this as a custom colour because obviously I want some control over how much cooling is going on this hair, because I know I might overlap some of the blonde, and if I have something that's too cool, I will turn that blonde hair very sludgy and maybe a bit bluish. This level of mixing isn't really something that I can kind of give you as a formula, because it's very, very client dependent. This is on a level 6. I'm dropping it down as well because I want to create a little bit more dimension and a little bit more multi-tonal effect in between each of the foils. So gives you an idea of, you know, where my thinking is at, but it's hard to give you an exact formula. You can see now how the foils go right up towards the high point in the head into a small triangle section, and we're just working through in exactly the same way with our tinting technique. We get that beautiful piece of lightness around the front hairline that I was describing to you earlier. It's like a money piece, but it's more just like a bold foil, but it comes out the scalp so seamlessly. Then we've got that dimension behind it to make that lighter piece around the face pop. We need that depth and that darkness behind that lighter piece around the face so that we do get to see that piece of colour just popping out. And then we've got these very fine strands of lightness that are diffusing into the hair. I really, really love these type of techniques where they just create that absolutely beautiful transition. And as you can see, we've also done a great job of controlling the warmth but not making the hair look ashy or sludgy, which is something that is very, very easy to do in these particular colour corrections. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you in the next one.